Hi, welcome. I'm back. So, sorry, this is a dynamic of using your phone. Now that my laptop isn't working very well, but I just spoke about how we need to be managing our emotions so that we're not overly taken over by the emotions, and that requires self control. Yeah, that self control has to be built up over time where you are. It's like building a wall. It's like building. Imagine the ancient cities and how they had these strong walls that were thick, and they say that Jericho walls had, walls so thick that 6 chariots could ride side by side. It takes time to build defenses, but it's something you have to learn to do on a step by step as you practice the muscle of self discipline and self restraint. Being able to be real, but at the same time allowing. Remember, we're being real with God here, right? We're not taking out issues on people or being frustrated with people because we haven't, excuse me, dealt with ourselves. But in essence, we're taking it to the Lord in prayer and we're working out our own emotional state in a constructive way. So that as we mourn the losses, we're saying, look, what did I do wrong here? What especially with opportunities or things that are in regards to our opportunities, the things that we expect out of life. You want to have a good life. You want to have smooth relationships. It won't always be the case. There are times we will experience genuine loss of things because their time has worn off. We've outgrown something, and you need to move out into another phase of life. So bye-bye this and this friendship, goodbye so and so, goodbye this and this relationship or that workplace or whatever. But you're not like stuck in the moment of that loss. You're not stuck in it. So you need to be in that position where you're actually speaking to your heart, like David. Why so cast down, O my soul? Put your hope in God. Why so cast down? It's not crazy for us to be encouraging ourselves, because sometimes the greater man in us, our spirit, needs to direct our emotion and our will and our thinking. The greater man in us. And I think that's what happened to David. When he was mourning the loss of that baby, he was in fasting. His spirit man rose up and transcended or overpowered his flesh and his soul, his ability to mourn unnecessarily. He took charge of his emotional state, his psychological state, and his willpower. He mastered that because he was in the presence of God. He allowed his spirit man to rise, so that then, as the spirit man had risen, his soul was in check, his emotional state was in check, his soul was in check in general, his will, his thoughts, his emotions. So the way that we end up guarding our heart is actually as a direct result of us spending time with God. I don't know any other way. You can tell me if you have it. It's actually a direct result of spending the presence of God and reducing our proclivities, our humanity, as we take on more of our higher being or our higher state of spirituality that allows us to transcend this other state, which is a lower state of being in turmoil, of being in, shock and disturbance all the time, because our emotions are allowed to take over. So that's how you guard your heart. You guard your heart by talking to God, by allowing Him to minister to you, by spending a lot of time away from your day-to-day for a while. It may take that. For some people, their coping mechanism is to throw themselves into the busyness of life. But then you haven't really dealt with it, right? So you need to deal with your losses. And the best way I know how is to go back to your Creator. Like I said in the previous video, and I believe it's just God telling you, nobody else can handle you. Nobody else can handle you except God. So allow Him to work it out in you. And if it takes a fast, let it be a fast, because a fast really allows you to deal with yourself on a deeper level, on a much, much deeper level. And you start to get revelation and things that, oh, hey, somebody is online. Do you want to say hello? Hi. So you want to deal with things on a much deeper level than just, this is what I see. God is able to actually show you more than just what you see to His perspective of things. So I've talked about dealing with grieving a person and dealing with grieving an opportunity. It's not always that it's your fault. Sometimes it's not your fault. Sometimes it's actually that things have, they've written their course, the time for that thing has ended, its course has been exploited, it's over. Things have run their course and now you need to, move on. How about matters that we don't have control over? So we said, there are things that are beyond us and we just need to accept that they are beyond us. At the same time, when you're speaking to God, He allows you to overcome something. He gives you the necessary prerequisite resources to tackle the unprecedented feeling of helplessness, really. He allows you to transcend all that. Proverbs 3:5-6 applies. It says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him and He will make straight your paths. He will make straight your paths. When we're in a state of grieving or mourning, it seems like we are on a winding, meandering, up and down kind of path. But it's God who straightens our paths. He's not afraid of bad news. God is not afraid of bad news. His heart is firm, trusting in the Lord. Your heart will be made firm, trusting in God. Because God has a plan for us. That's it. God has a plan for us, and even bad news fit within His vision. Okay, and that was borrowed from Inspirational Stories. So to proclaim, our work is to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God, and to comfort all who mourn. And someone was telling me that, talking about the day of vengeance is actually a scare tactic. I don't think so. The truth is that at Jesus' coming back, we will be judged. It's true. I mean, we can't avoid it. It's very plain text in the scripture. Isaiah 61 and verse 2. This was part of God's mandate, and it is also a mandate to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort those who mourn. I think I'm referring to this verse because of the comfort all who mourn. The truth is, there is a beyond now, a beyond the physical. There's an invisible and there is a tomorrow. There's a tomorrow that's beyond the visible physical life that we have. And at that point, the books will be opened and you will be judged based on what you did with you, not just your resources, but with you. What did you do with your emotions? Did you allow your emotions to get the better of you? Did you spend time wallowing in something that was no longer of any consequence? Really, it was past and that's it. Did you maximize your time? When somebody is invested in something, you know what they do? They take stock. And in their taking stock, they check whether there is a return on their investment. And that is what God does. He's invested so much capacity in you, and He is taking stock. He is writing down your highs, your lows, your moments. So you don't be unnecessarily redundant, unnecessarily stuck, unnecessarily stagnating in anything that really you have been given the power to overcome, because if we rely on our own self, we will fail to move on. But it says trust in the Lord with all your heart, all of it. So that includes the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good things, you trust in God. In the bad times, you're trusting in God. You don't lean on your own understanding, because if you try to understand everything, you'll be depressed. Our ways, God's ways are not our ways. Our ways are so limited. So he will be trying to do something here, but all you're seeing is darkness. And yet he's working even in the dark, or in what you call your dark. He's still there in the midst of the turmoil. He's still working out something more purer, more better for you. So in all your ways, when you acknowledge him, he makes that way straight. You trust him. Trust is best established in the thick of things, in the moment when there seems to be no way, no light, right? So it's just for you to ponder. It's something to ponder. Trust doesn't mean anything if you can see your way. Trust makes sense when you don't see your way. Trust makes sense when you actually are walking blind. That is when trust is tested, because that means you're trusting that whoever you're with or whoever you're allowing to guide you actually knows the way. Right? And that's why even the children of Israel had to trust Moses to guide them through to their promised land. So God has a plan. He has the roadmap. He knows where he's going. You need to trust him to take you there, even through the turmoil of life, even in the losses, even through the grieving, the mourning. So he will comfort those who mourn. We have people who will comfort us. God will use people to comfort us. If they're following God, if they're people who can be used by God, they will be used to comfort you. But God will comfort us. But also, I just, my eyes just landed on this, that it was actually Jesus's mandate, and by extension our mandate as believers, to declare the year of God's favor and the day of vengeance. There's a day of vengeance. So whoever it is or whatever it is that you think you've lost, it will all be rectified. There are accounts, and they will be balanced. So in his work, Mark Manson, this is I think the last or second last section. In his work, Mark Manson has talked about your mind, observing your mind, like you have a mind, and that's how come, especially with ladies, you're able to multitask, because you have a mind and a mind. You have the active mind, like right now I'm speaking and I'm processing what I'm talking about, but I'm also reading and I'm processing what I am reading so that I can tell you what, sort of processing it, right? At the same time, I'm aware of my environment. I know there's a noise. I know that there's, a bike that has just ridden past. You have a mind and a mind, and you have a mind that observes things. It could also be that our minds can observe our emotions so that we are not utterly consumed by them. You're looking at things from an observer perspective. And your greater you, which I talked about after you've connected with God, when you connect with your spirit, you're able to observe some things without necessarily them causing you to do anything crazy. You don't jump off a bridge because your girlfriend dumped you, You're able to observe all that and draw useful and productive conclusions. Like I said, sort of assess what happened there and what you need to learn. Right? And in that moment, especially if you are doing it in a meditative state with God, with your journal, with your music on, or something to just help you process things, you're able to even get deeper revelation as to what you lost. Especially if it's their opportunities, their relationships, or whatever happened, you're able to get downloads, or God is able to show you this is actually a gain for you. I know it sounds crazy, but you actually get to see. It's happened to me where I see the beauty of it. It looks like it's ashes, but you get to see the beauty of ashes. And instead of fueling the emotions with the entertainment of constant chatter about those negative feelings, and I think maybe ladies are more prone to this, we talk a lot about ourselves and what we're going through. Instead of fueling, because what that conversation does, really with somebody who is not really out to help you flesh out the do's and don'ts, but instead is sort of fueling your emotional state of anger, resentment, bitterness, regret. The more we talk about things without really attending to their innate or inherent state, what does this really represent? If you don't flesh that out, the chatter about those negative feelings ends up fueling the negativity of it. Yeah. So we ought to choose to merely observe those thoughts and cast them out if they turn toxic. The things you cancel out, you're like, you know what? I'm not going to wallow in this. I'm not going to wallow in it because it's starting to steal time. It becomes a thief. Grief can turn into a thief. And in the toxicity of it, we can even create worst case scenarios that are not even what it is, right? You start to think, oh my gosh, so and so died of cancer. Maybe I'm gonna die of cancer. You start to create scenarios, and those scenarios will turn toxic. They'll turn your soul toxic. And remember, we're saying if we're going to live the best version, we need to be productive ourselves. We need to be active. So the Bible teaches us to get rid of any thought that rises itself above the knowledge of Christ. I think Christ mourned quickly, because even when Lazarus died, he did cry. He wept. He mourned for him. And having the power to raise him may have helped, but really I think his weeping shows that he was human and he dealt with that. The sadness of it did overcome him. And it's not like we're not going to be overcome, but it's allowing it to happen and then allowing that to free us, the acknowledgement to free us to do something more with our lives. So it becomes a stepping stone rather than a barrier. The grief becomes a stepping stone rather than a barrier. We can become more out of grieving. We can actually expand ourselves from grief. We can expand our capacity to handle things from grief. We can expand our capacity to be compassionate from grief. We can expand our thoughtfulness and our ability to act better when we see somebody else who's going through the same thing because of what we've been through. It's an experience that can actually deepen relationships and make them firmer. Yeah? So our weapons, it says, are not carnal but mighty through God, the pulling down of strongholds. So we're saying you don't want to be held captive by grief. You don't want it to end up marking territory in your life, taking up real estate, building a house in your mind, influencing your day-to-day, influencing what you do, because you've allowed it to take you over. You don't want that. You don't want that because then you're hosting an enemy. That grief is your enemy. It's not allowing you to be all you can be. You gotta kick it out. You gotta throw it out on the street and just, issue that eviction notice and evict it. That's what we're talking about, casting down imaginations and everything that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. God is peace. God is in control of things. So we shouldn't be losing control. We shouldn't be feeling despondent and sad and depressed. Bringing into captivity every thought in obedience to Christ. Whatever Christ is what we should be allowing to reign in our own life, to manifest in our own life. Whatever Christ is not should be kicked out. Quickly, expediently. So what does this mean? It simply means that we should reject it and banish the thought that is contrary to our knowledge of Christ. And that's why we need to study. Study the Bible. The Bible is your manual to life. There is no other book. There is no other manual. There is no other. I will repeat it. There is no other manual to life. It's the Bible. And prayer, a little prayer could also help. But know who God is, because He lives in you, especially if you have surrendered your life to God. He lives in you. So anything that doesn't show up looking like God, doesn't look like Jesus, trying to take over you, make you a mess, especially make you a mess for too long, no, it should go. So this prayer I wrote down is probably what we should say, and it's from Psalms 118 verse 17. It says, Father, I reject the thought that my life is over because the relationship with Da ended, or my opportunity to have this contract ended. I reject the thought that my life is over. It's not over. In Jesus Christ's mighty name, I will not die but live and declare the works of the Lord. I will not die but live to declare. Sometimes we live dead. We're alive but we're dead. We gave up on our dreams. You're earning more money but you're living a lesser than life because you're not truly expanding yourself in terms of the skills, the abilities that God has given you. You're limiting yourself because you've limited your goals to basic things when God has something greater for you. So you're not going to die. You're not going to kill your dreams. In Jesus' name. Stay tuned for the next video. Like, share, comment. Let me know what you thought. Don't be afraid to join in live next time. You probably want to also share what your experience is or drop me a chat. See you in the next video. Bye bye.